the title came from a poem that comes, I think, deeper into the book towards the middle. And I don't want to give that away because it might be like a bit of a spoiler. But I wanted to choose a title that was in conversation with the first book, firstly, but also spoke to the fact that my characters have all of these things that have been unsaid for so many years, and this this story comes at a place in their life when those truths are coming out. So it felt so intuitive to just like amplify that idea of telling the truth. This is like a moment of truth telling for them and for so many of us. And telling the truth can be hard. Like it can be so hard when you're you're dealing with the things that the characters in this book are dealing with. From like trauma to like fear of deportation and the fear of speaking up in a patriarchal world where your voice as a woman is just not welcome to begin with. um Truth telling, I think, is like a radical act. It's a very brave, radical thing to do. So it felt intuitive for this topic. I think so, but I also think that I'm the kind of person where I've learned how to emotionally like disconnect myself from the pressure, because I think that when I first started, I remember like when I first released When You Ask Me Where I'm Going, and I was just so terrified of like that first review that was coming out. Um, to the point that like I just like couldn't like go online. Like I couldn't go on Goodreads. Like I just like was, but I would still like go on Goodreads. I would just like scroll through everything like obsessively, and it just wasn't like a healthy thing for me. But since then, like I've really like developed really strong boundaries for myself, and have had so many lovely authors that give me like their best advice on how to sustainably like manage your mental health in like an industry where your work is constantly like under scrutiny. And sometimes we're socialized to believe that we need to absorb everything in order to be the strongest writer, when in reality we need to like create like boundaries for ourselves and our mental health, and know that growth happens when we give ourselves trust and um, the creative space to be able to thrive and explore new things and test things out, and maybe like don't love everything, and give yourself the opportunity to revise and revise and revise until you do love what you do. um so yeah, that's been like a process, but I'm at a place right now where I'm like, I know that I'm excited about what I'm doing, and I'm doing it like very much like quietly in my own space. So the pressure isn't there. I think the pressure might come along later on when um we go through that same old process that we always go through when a book is published and it's released to the world. You just like cross your fingers and hope that it reaches the people it needs. um but I'm in like a very like cool writing space right now where like it's just me and my story. It was interesting because the way that I wrote this book, it was like I really very much paced myself. I would give myself like daily word goals, and I would be writing until I was done writing, and then I would just like take my brain out because um just like for my mental health and like my well-being, like I think it's so important to have boundaries. I have a close loved one who is an actor, and I've seen like how intense like method acting can get. And I think that when you're a novelist, like you're kind of doing the same thing. Like you are bringing people to life in your head in like very visceral, real ways. And in order to get those emotions on paper, you got to feel the emotions as well. And I was mindful of that, and how I was going to be going to places like mentally where I've experienced pain, or like my community has experienced pain, or like women before me have experienced a lot of pain, and we internalize that generationally, don't we? So I needed to just be like conscientious of the fact that once I'm done writing, like I just sit down and I let my mind rest. Almost like when you're done working out, like you just sit there and like you just don't push yourself further after that. I vividly remember that when I was narrating the audiobook for the novel, I had like the privilege of being able to do that for this book, and it was amazing because I'd never narrated a fictional novel before. But I knew that there were just certain things that I would only be able to invoke poetically through my own voice, and I kind of pushed myself to take on that challenge, even though I was terrified. But I remember like when we were recording, it was like 4 days straight in an audio booth, and that was like it was like a version of acting where you weren't on camera visually, but like your voice is doing all the things. Like you were like taking on your character's voice and screaming when they're screaming, crying when they're crying, and like feeling that pain when they're in pain. You have to really bring it out, you know, on the mic. And I would have to like sit there and just like in the mornings, like just sit there and imagine the scenes that I'm going to be sitting in and take myself into that sadness. And I think that was like that moment where I was reliving everything and it was challenging. And we did it for 4 days straight. And at the end of the 4 days, like I was just like done. Like I was just like, I need to just rest and like sit on a beach. I recorded like in Vancouver, near like the ocean. And I just remember like on the last day I just sat there on the beach in Kitsilano and just like decompressed and let everything go that needed to go. But also felt grateful for the fact that I was able to bring all my emotions out on the bike like that and record them and then release them for myself. So I think it's like it goes back to just like boundaries and self-awareness and knowing that like you are allowed to rest, you are allowed to take a break, you are allowed to just like feel what you need to feel and then let it go and take care of yourself on your terms and not somebody else's. Because I think again, like we're taught that like, you know, sometimes we just need to keep going and going and going and it doesn't, it's not always sustainable.